It was a week ago today that the president announced something that could drive up the cost of your next car.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
A new CBS News YouGov poll shows that 72% of Americans think the tariffs that Donald Trump is scheduled to put into effect at midnight tonight will increase prices in the short term, and less than a third in that poll believe it will drive prices down in the long term.
Joining us is ABC News White House correspondent Karen Travers. Karen, he threatened not just those tariffs, a lot of tariffs in his first term, and they didn't come to fruition. Will he actually go through with this?
Well, there are a lot that already have been put in place. Let's look back. The 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from every country went into effect on March 12th. There have been tariffs put in place on Canada and Mexico, goods that aren't covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. And, of course, there were two different rounds on tariffs on China, February and then again in March. So there have been some off-ramps. There have been some pullbacks after negotiations. There was the pause on auto tariffs. But he has gone through with significant tariffs so far. But this one, in theory, based on what they have been hinting at, could be the big one, because it could be on, dozens and dozens of countries around the world, or it might not be. The White House just hasn't said yet. The president on Sunday said it's going to be on all countries, indicating it would be on all U.S. trade partners. Last night he was asked if there would be any exemptions, any countries that would be excluded. And he said, maybe, it depends, that perhaps he wouldn't target countries that had smaller trade deficits with the United States. But we'll find out tomorrow. The president's going to do an event in the Rose Garden. They're very much hyping this up, having the cabinet there to highlight impacts across different sectors. But again, very few details right now on what countries are going to be a part of this, what products from those countries, and what the percentages of these tariffs.
So are you hoping for handouts in the Rose Garden tomorrow so we can keep track of all of what's going to happen?
Yeah, this is going to be complicated, and there was a question yesterday in the Oval Office of, are they still working this out at this point? And the president said he's decided, but just wouldn't give details. He met yesterday with the head of Stellantis, one of the automakers, and I asked him whether he was hearing from auto companies, including Stellantis, that they are asking him to pull back on these auto tariffs. We have heard that there is big concern among the U.S. automakers because there's a 25% tariff right now on imported vehicles. That's about half of the cars that Americans buy each year. But there's also that other 25% tariff on auto parts, things that are coming into this country. So even cars that are built, made in America, will likely see a price increase because the parts that go into it are coming from overseas. The president downplayed that to me yesterday and said, no, he's not hearing concerns from automakers, and that he gave them a 1-month reprieve and they were able to stock up and buy a lot of things at that point and bring in a lot of material because they weren't facing the tariff for that 1-month period.
What about the Democrats and their response to these tariffs?
They're calling out how this is going to impact consumers, and that's really all they can do at this point is highlight the potential impact, and say how this is going to trickle down to Americans, and say that this is, a president who talked about lowering costs on day one, and that this could have a significant impact on Americans' wallets. And economists are saying that too. Everybody we have talked to over the past several weeks say, let's just take cars, for example. The price of a new car on average right now is about $50,000. When these tariffs go into effect, in about a month to 2 months' time, you could see that price go up by about $8,000. Used cars will also go up because there's going to be a demand for used cars as the price of new cars goes up. And then again with these tariffs this week, because we just don't know how sweeping they're going to be and on what products, there's just a lot of uncertainty among businesses right now about how they can plan for this and what costs they might have to pass down to consumers. So that's really been the message from Democrats is, this is going to cost you in your wallet.
All right. Thanks so much, Karen. That is ABC News White House correspondent Karen Travers joining us this morning from the West Wing.
Now, even though the White House says President Trump's long-teased tariffs set to go into effect at midnight tonight will raise hundreds of billions for the Treasury and spark more companies to make their products in America, many economists say you're the one who has to pay the price.
Yeah, and a new CBS News poll shows that many people agree with those economists. That poll says 72% of Americans think the tariffs will increase prices in the short term, and less than a third believe it will drive prices down in the long term.
So how does this, we've heard corporate America respond to this. We've certainly seen the reaction on the market, but what about small business owners? Gabe Hagen is joining us. He is the owner of Brick Road Coffee in Tempe. Gabe, good morning. And is the cost of your coffee going up from the tariffs that worries you the most, or is it something else?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I think it's, the uncertainty is definitely not easy to plan around. So not knowing what direction things are going is definitely impacting small businesses.
And so you really aren't even able to anticipate whether you're going to have to raise prices or not, or maybe you're anticipating it, but you don't know if you're going to actually have to go through with it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing right now is we continue to kind of readjust how we plan to proceed almost day by day at this point, because as most know, coffee doesn't grow in the United States. So there's imports no matter what way I look at it. So this threat, again, on again, off again stuff, the whiplash is really kind of just causing a lot of strife over here.
Now, you have told our reporter, Colton Krolak, that you bought a lot of things in anticipation of the tariffs. What did you decide to go ahead and stock up on, and what effect has that had on your business?
Yeah, so we, in December, when there was the threat of tariffs coming in, we decided to pre-purchase as many cups as we could. So we purchased most of our inventory for the year for our cups for our to-go beverages, because that's the majority of our disposable that we use. And unfortunately, still a lot of those are manufactured overseas. There are some that are manufactured onshore, but the prices are just higher. And if I were to switch over, I would have to raise prices. So I did purchase that. And the impact really comes down to small businesses. We rely on what little capital we have. And so tying up my cash into now an inventory asset really makes it kind of hard to now navigate any other uncertainties or any other, things that kind of come out of nowhere.
So cups are imported, the coffee's imported. Anything else that you're worried about to operate your business that could be going up in a wholesale fashion that you might have to pass along to your customers?
Those are probably the biggest two for me. Obviously, the other thing that impacts us is the uncertainty in the consumer. We feel it. We feel the consumers making decisions. Coffee is one of the last affordable luxuries, and that uncertainty changes consumer behaviors pretty quick. So we'll feel the dip in sales when there's high talks of things going on, especially right now as we're leading up to whatever's going to happen tomorrow.
So let me ask you this. If you did have to raise prices, how much do you think you would have to raise them? And are you afraid that's going to drive away the consumers who are still like, oh, I don't care. I'm good. I need my coffee. And how many of those will turn away and just go, oof, that's too much. I can make it at home.
Yeah, the how much we're going to have to raise really depends on how much of a tariff goes in. I've kind of done the math, and I think the only approach that I can take to keep my business somewhat sustainable is to just do a pass through. So whatever tariff comes onto my products, I'm going to have to pass that through to my costs. We're talking a 10 to 20% increase in price. So of course that's going to impact consumers. Not everybody is going to continue to be able to purchase that, and that's just we're just talking one aspect of a consumer's day-to-day spending. And I think small businesses across the country we're hoping that we can get some more certainty from what's going to go on, so that way we can really kind of plan and make decisions that will help stabilize, the main streets of America.
We were talking with Gabe Hagen. He's the owner of Brick Road Coffee in Tempe about the effect that tariffs are going to have on his business. And actually, just the threat of tariffs has already had on his business. Two-part question here, real quickly, if you can answer. How many employees do you have, both full and part-time? And do you anticipate having to let somebody go because of the cost that tariffs will bring to your business?
So we're actually in a really unique position. We started the process of a second location mid last year. So we're actually in construction right now for a second location. So we do still anticipate hiring. Our hiring plans have changed, and we are reducing the number that we will be hiring to staff that second location, just because we feel we fully anticipate a much slower start for that location than we originally expected. So right now we have about 4 full-time people and then 6 part-timers, and we were planning on basically doubling that within the next month. But now we're looking at probably 2 full-time and maybe 4 part-timers to manage the new location.
Gabe Hagen, the owner of Brick Road Coffee in Tempe, thanks for your time and just your insight into what, how these things are affecting one small corner of our world, but it kind of radiates out. People who are scared and uncertain make moves that they normally wouldn't have to do.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.